Welcome to Scoop World Order. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Big eclipse day tomorrow. 6 days away from the massive Buffalo Wild Wings tailgate party we're going to have for the spring game. You guys are all invited. The corner of Lane and High Street, 9 a.m. to 11:30. The game kicks off at noon. So swing by, come by, say hello. Wear your Buckeye Scoop gear. I'll get you a free beer. Appreciate you guys. It seems like there's going to be a big turnout. I hope there is. Looking forward to meeting a lot of you guys and you guys meeting each other. We've got a great community. So I think this is going to be a fantastic get together. Going to get into some of the stuff over the weekend that we've gotten, some notes on who is excelling through spring football. Just a handful of practices left in the spring game, and then it is a capstone on spring football. So this is going to be going really quickly. So as always, we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for tuning in last night with Troy Smith. I thought that was a fantastic episode. Troy will be back soon. His golf tournament is called Troy's Tournament. Google that. You can look it up on his Twitter, his Instagram, Facebook. They have pages for it. It's going to be an outstanding event. He's got a bunch of his Heisman brothers that are coming in for the event. So I think it's going to be really well attended. I think it's going to be really fun. Raises money for NIL. Great cause. Troy is doing great things right now. So support that. And let me know in the comments, what did you think of the interview last night? We're going to break some more film down with Troy. So I think that's something that people really like is going through some of the signature plays that he had in his career. I've got the All-22 film. We can break down through Troy's eyes. And I think people are going to love that. Troy obviously was one of the greatest players in the history of the program. And I think he's a guy that frankly isn't appreciated enough in modern times. And if he played in today's era, good God, he might have won 3 Heisman. So, but as always, if you guys enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. You're going to alert when we go live around 7 o'clock each and every night. Nevada will be back tomorrow. Really excited about this week. Again, the Buffalo Wild Wings thing, please show up to it. I think it'll be a blast. I think you guys will make some new friends, and it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited to see you guys and to meet with you guys. But for tonight, we are graced by the presence of the great Funky Buck. Funky is back in the building. Funky, how are you tonight?
I'm doing awesome, Kirk. I just got home from the Cavaliers-Clippers game. Got to watch the Cavs blow a 25-point lead, and I could not be better. It was fantastic. It was some great basketball after the fourth quarter, Kirk. That was awesome. Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. Well, Funky, spring football is coming to a close next Saturday, 6 days away. It flies by every year. And there's been some guys that have had significant changes in their stock, in their role through the course of spring practice. Again, they've had, 10 or 11 or 12-ish type practices so far. I don't really count the first couple that are in pads, but the guys have put some good stuff on tape. There are some guys that have grown significantly. Obviously, a name that you wanted to start with when we did our pre-show was Jeremiah Smith, and also Julian Saint. Talk a little bit about what J.J. Smith has accomplished since he first put the helmet on, from his first practice to this past Friday, where he had another dominating one-handed catch. Talk a little bit about JJ and what he's done so far.
Well, yeah, we knew JJ was very, very good going into this year, and we knew that eventually he would have a huge role going for this Ohio State football team. But I don't think we truly understand how big of a role he's going to have. He's bringing in so much national media attention, and it's just going to become more and more and more as they start to pick up on him. So that's why I can't wait that this game is nationally televised, because I think it's going to bring so much positive attention to Ohio State football and how good Ohio State can be this year. And I'm just very excited for J.J. Smith. And another guy who I think the national media is going to want to pick up on soon is C.J. Hicks. C.J. Hicks is slowly but surely turning into the 5-star that we all knew he could be. And I'm just very pumped up to watch him perform at the spring game. Yeah.
I think CJ is a guy that'll have an interesting role in the spring game because generally they don't do a ton of blitzing, but I think they could do some blitzing, and CJ shines as a blitzer. I think that's where he's going to make a big mark this year as an aggressive downhill guy. Again, there's always this kind of ebb and flow that goes on between, what the most prolific and fun things to do are on defense versus what are the best things for the defense. And what I mean by that is like with say Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, two guys that I think are very talented pass rushers. A lot of the times they don't get kind of the full breadth of their pass rush repertoire to use because of Jim Knowles' defense. Jim Knowles is really big on containing the quarterback, especially when it's a running quarterback. He wants to keep the guy in the pocket. He wants to pressure him. He's not as obsessed with sacks. Again, when he was at Oklahoma State, he had 57 sacks his last year, but he had to be a lot more of a high risk guy because I mean the team wasn't as good, the players weren't as good. With Ohio State, you don't have to go for broke all the time because you have so much talent. You can just kind of let the players do the work because they're going to win the battles just because they're just better players. It's different than Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, when you play Oklahoma, you've got dramatically less talent. You play Texas, you have dramatically less talent. When you play probably half the teams in your conference, you've got either equal or less talent. And then obviously the bottom feeders they're better than. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see what he can do. Some guys on defense that could have huge spring games. The ends always seem to do well, especially when the quarterbacks are younger. They hold on to the ball longer. So a guy like Mitchell Melton, who unfortunately got hurt last year in the spring game, is a guy that I think could have a huge spring game. He's been a dominating pass rusher so far during spring. Caden McDonald is a guy who his whole bugaboo. He's a weight guy. He's always going to be a weight guy. He's 335 pounds. So those are the guys that if he can save 320, that 15 pounds he takes off will keep his stamina. He'll be able to play longer and play harder. But he can make an impact. Some of these young D linemen have a shot to really do some things like Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry. Those guys, they're third year juniors now. I mean, they've got 2 years left on the calendar. There's not a lot of sand left in the hourglass, so it's going to be interesting to see what they get out of those guys. And then on the flip, the offensive tackles, there's a lot of intrigue around George Fitzpatrick, Tigre Tishkabola. Obviously, I think that right now the first team tackles are pretty much set with Josh Simmons and with Fryer together. But who's the third tackle? Is it George? Is it Tigre? Is it Zen? Zen seems to have fallen behind in the race. He's running with the threes a lot right now. So who looks the best in the shoe? Because again, it's one thing to do great in practice. It's another thing to turn up in the shoe. Because this is going to be on national TV. A lot of these guys haven't played in the horseshoe before. Not major minutes. Not with the whole world watching. They might play the fourth quarter of the Akron game when we're up by 77 points. But people are going to be watching this game, and you get a little bit more anxiety when you know that the world's watching and it's going to be on Fox and all the rest that comes with it. Funky, as we go into this last game, who do you project? Like, project your storyline for the spring game, like the day after the spring game. What's the headline? Is it Julian Sain is dominant? Is it JJ Smith? Is it Jaden Ballard? Is it defensive struggle? If the weather is fair and there isn't some sort of catastrophic rainy or snow, because we've had rain and snow at spring games before. What's your projected headline for the spring game?
Well, I think after the spring game, I think it's going to be very clear that Will Howard is the man. I think his arm talent and his running ability is going to be shown off at full force, and I think Ohio State fans are going to see in first person how good this guy really is, because he is just once it comes to like you said, playing in the shoe, that's a lot different than playing at practice. And I know it's just a spring game, but I think you can see when a player looks like a professional compared to a player that lacks experience like Devin Brown. So I think I think the storyline after the fact is going to be that Will Howard is the starting quarterback for Ohio State football this year. And another guy that I'm really excited to watch, another like third year offensive lineman, is Hero Canoe. I think that he is going to make a way bigger impact than what people think, especially since hopefully we start rotating our defensive ends a little more compared to last year with just getting more fresh bodies in there and letting them like actually rush the pass rusher instead of cage rushing. I think that'll be a very interesting thing to see for this upcoming year and for the spring game. But yes, I think Will Howard is the storyline to watch out for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much of Will we see, and something that always hurts guys that have the ability to run is, a guy like Will's not going to be live, so he'll be in a black jersey the whole game. So how much do you show him potentially running versus, when it's a two-hand touch thing, it kind of ruins the experience. Because I think when he actually gets into a real game and he really is allowed to run and he really can get hit, I think that's when he's going to thrive. I just think that, and it'll be interesting, like, because, he's got to play a little bit. I mean, he's a guy, he's got a lot of career starts at Kansas State, but, I think that there aren't really that many guys that are sacred cows on offense outside of Trey and Emeka. And by sacred cows, I mean guys that, frankly, they're going to be held out for a long period. And again, like I can see Jack Sawyer, JT2 Malala being held out. I could see Cody Simon being held just because he's got an injury history. Obviously, Lathan's not going to go. Caleb Downs you'll probably play a half of the game. Denzel, I could see getting held just because he had some injuries last year. But, the O-line, I mean, they're really maybe Donnie, but I mean, they finished on such a poor note last year that I think that those guys are going to play, and it's going to be interesting to see how they form the teams. With Ryan, they've in general done a draft where it was like the first team offense on one side, the first team defense on the other, and then the second team, is with the second team defense is with the first team offense, and the first team defense is with the second team offense, and that's how they split up the scarlet and the gray. So I think it's gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna be fun. I miss like the olden days of Jim Tressel. We used to actually do a spring game draft, and they would literally draft the whole team out. So you'd be playing with who knows what on your side of the ball, guys that had never played together. But it was always kind of fun because it was literally like a team divided. So you could, I always thought that was a more fun format, but it's less cohesive and it's less evaluation friendly than when you have guys playing with guys that they've been playing next to, especially on the offensive line. But yeah, I think it's gonna be exciting. Sean Rawlings, I'm not sure if you have a question. Our first super chat of the night. Thank you for the 10, and thank you for being a Scoop Ultra member as well. Sean, if you got a question, toss that in the chat. Sometimes you guys send that stuff in, but it'll be interesting. And also, we'll make this a Scoop Ultra chat. So if you guys have questions and you are Scoop Ultra members, just throw them in the chat. It works just like a super chat. We'll throw it up on the screen, and we will take your questions. Again, what do you guys want to see out of the spring game? I think that for me, it'll be interesting to see what we see out of Julian Sane. What do we see out of Aaron Nolan? In Tressel's day, those guys would have both been live quarterbacks. I don't know if Ryan's going to do that. I doubt he does that. That hasn't really been his style. But I don't mind these young guys. These young guys getting hit a little bit in the shoe, just because I think that it's good for their character and to get those guys rolling a little bit. Funky, as we finish up spring ball, we've got a couple practices left. They do the coaching clinic on Friday, practicing tomorrow, Wednesday. What are some things you want to hear out of the Woody Hayes for this next week? Because I think that, for me, I want to hear what's the stability like at right guard, because Carson Hinzman ran a lot in this most recent scrimmage on Friday at right guard, which is great. Him and Seth McLaughlin are both rotating between center and right guard. One plays center, one plays right guard. Luke Montgomery's obviously playing right guard as well. I like the competition there. What are some things that you want to hear about this last week leading into the spring game?
I want to hear about a tight end stepping up, Kirk. I want to hear about a tight end just coming out and being like, that's our starting tight end for this new year. Because we're just not sure if we have that right now. I mean, that's our biggest weakness right now. We know that Ryan Day loves playing a tight end, so we're just hoping that someone could step up and at least be like a Cade Stover-like player for us this year that can create some good blocking while becoming a receiver threat. But we just don't know if we really have that, right? With G. Scott, and or not Tigra. Oh my God, I'm completely forgetting. Or the guy who transferred from Ohio. I think it's just going to be very interesting to see if any of them really come up and shine. And another player that I hope we find out, I want to hear more about Brandon Ennis. I feel like we've not heard his name a lot this offseason, but we know Brandon Ennis is a very, very, very good football player, and he's a little bit buried on the depth chart right now, being probably backup for Emeka in the slot. And I want to hear a little more about him. I want to hear that Brandon Inniss is becoming a star wide receiver like we know he should become.
Yeah, I think Brandon has fallen behind because he's had an injury. He's been out for the last couple of weeks. So the problem with Brandon is like, you know, does he have enough? Is he healthy enough to practice this week, get some work in this week, and then does he have enough conditioning to actually play in the game and get some snaps on film? Because again, it's if you ask me, if you put a gun to my head, start of spring ball, who are your top three receivers? Well, I'm saying, well, obviously Brandon's with Cardell and Emeka. That's like easy peasy. But when you've got J.J. Smith behind you, I mean, you don't have any room for error. I think JJ's overtaken Brandon. I'm sure Brandon probably feels like that's just because, I mean, he's a phenom. He's LeBron James. If LeBron James overtakes you as a freshman, like there's no shame in that. But that's what JJ is. He's LeBron. He's a phenom. He's 18 years old. He does stuff that nobody else can do. Nobody else can cover. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's faster. He puts in the work. He's an insane worker, guys. Like, I mean, I talked to his trainer. This kid, Miami, 100 degrees, running hills nonstop. That's why he's such an explosive runner, explosive hurdler. One thing I love in skill guys, corners, receivers, are big time hurdlers. Brian Hartline was a hurdler. Ted Ginn was a hurdler. Those guys have different levels of explosion, illusion. And it's something that I think is really valuable for coordination in playing football, and Brian, I think Brian likes when a guy's a big time hurdler, especially if you're getting out of Texas or Florida, man. You're getting guys that can fly. And JJ, as big as he is and as prolific as he was in the hurdles, like I think it carries right over into what he's doing at spring football. He's not scared of anything. He's here on this is a business trip. This is a 3-year business trip for JJ, and he acts like it. I mean, he's here to put in that work, and it's a lot like Julian Saint. Like Julian Saint's from Carlsbad, California, so. He's not coming to Ohio for anything other than to get developed by the best quarterback developer in the country in Ryan Day, and then you throw Chip Kelly in there and you throw that offense in there, and it's going to be scary. And I think he's going to be the star of the spring game to me, is Julian Saint, because he's going to be working behind kind of a makeshift line, I'm sure. So he's going to have to catch that rock and get rid of it fast, like really fast. And I think that's going to be something where he's going to be really working hard with Chip Kelly, with the line, with Ryan Day to get it in. I think that it's going to be interesting. You talk about tight ends. I mean, it's funny. Last year, one of the stars of the entire spring game was G. Scott. G. Scott was a guy. A lot of rumors about him hitting the transfer portal. I don't know if they're true or not, but when there's a lot of smoke, there's usually some fire there. And he ended up having a huge game, like 3 or 4 catches, was featured. And that's always kind of an underlying thing to me when I watch the spring game is, okay, like we know who Trey Henderson is. We know who Jack Sawyer is. We know who Denzel Burke is. Who are they trying to feature, especially on offense, to keep them happy and try to keep them in the fold? Because again, the second portal window opens up, and some kids are happy right now, some kids aren't happy right now. And that's not an Ohio State thing. That's just a college football thing where some guys thought they were going to start, they're going to be the top backup. They might be a little further down the depth chart, or they might have gotten leapfrogged by Jeremiah Smith or somebody really good. So like, what do they do to kind of massage the egos? I mean, Evan Pryor a couple years ago looked like Reggie Bush in the spring game. It looked explosive, and and again, it's also a double-edged sword, because for these kids, as the spring game has never been a bigger event than it is now because of NIL. Like with NIL, man, like guys would have a couple sacks in a spring game, and all of a sudden they're getting a car lease, or they're getting a Rooster sponsorship, or they're getting on the radar for a heating and cooling business, whatever. And that's why I tell these guys, look, this is like the Super Bowl for you guys, man. You go out there and ball, you play well, you lock down a starting spot. Like, I mean, you can legitimately you can farm that and turn that into like a monetized effort for your little NIL campaigns. So I think it's going to be exciting to see some of that stuff. Funky, as the spring games evolved, I know that you haven't seen as many as I have little bit younger. But what are your thoughts on that? Again, as young athletes, again, I like old time college football, but I love the new NIL era because I think it helps us get guys like Caleb Downs. I know it helps us get guys like Caleb Downs and JJ Smith. Um, but what are your thoughts on the mindset of a young athlete when he has to go and if he balls out, he could make some actual serious money in NIL deals after a spring game?
I think anything that could bring more excitement to this spring game is always a positive thing. Because I remember my dad always had the spring game on the television, and I would always kind of just watch it and not really care about what's really going on. But nowadays with like NIL, you hear about these guys constantly. If that's from ads, from social media, that you can name so many players, and I think it's just very exciting to watch a game where you can act, like, you're following what's actually happening and like the storylines. Watching Julian Sane at quarterback, and now we have JJ Smith, who's for sure gonna play. Those the $10 tickets in the shoe for the 100,000 tickets that are probably gonna be sold to this game. They're gonna want to watch JJ Smith play. That's why fans are coming, and I just think the fact that we're able to sell out a spring game is gonna be pretty cool. Because I think we're. Do you think we're gonna sell out, Kirk? How much tickets do you think we're gonna sell?
I think as long as the weather is good, I think it'll be pretty close to a sellout. Selling out the whole thing is tough. And I don't think Fox airing it helps just because it's going to be at home in 4K. So
True.
I
Yeah.
think it's cool. I think it's really cool. But as well as anybody, like when you can watch an event from the comfort of your home in 4K, like it's as good as being there, especially if you go to seats. But I mean, the spring game always fills up because the tickets are insanely expensive now. So if you want to take your family out and go watch a game, and the tickets are $10, and you can go sit in the front row if you get there early enough, because the thing is like the game is all general admission. So if you get in the door, you can go sit in the front row, in tickets that normally cost thousands of dollars for season tickets. So you can take your family, you can sit down though, you can have a good time. So I think I don't know if it'll sell out. I know that it sold out in '06, the year that we beat Notre Dame and we were preseason number one. Troy came back. Troy had one drive, scored a touchdown. He was done. But like that sold out. And I think it'll be close. Again, the game is so weather dependent, in my opinion, just because you've got a we've had bad weather before. Like I said, in '05, it snowed during the spring game, so that wasn't optimal for the old participation of fans coming out. But and honestly, the games aren't nearly as good as they used to be. And Doreen, you're right there. The open practices with Tress were awesome. I was on teams where we did that. We were in the horseshoe, basically filled the horseshoe up when we had an open practice in the shoe. Because I mean, those practices, we didn't hold anything back. Oh wow, I did not know this, Doreen. I appreciate you. The A and double A seats are $100 for a spring game. See, that's wild. That's crazy. In the chat, let me know. Are you going to the game? That's going to be interesting to see how many people actually show up to it. I think that for the young guys that are trying to kind of cement their spot and where they stand on the depth chart in the pecking order, the spring games it's big. Now it's not huge, but it's big. I think the practices are much bigger just because there's less mismatch. It's more controlled. I think that guys can coaches can get a better read on the kids. When they have 14 or 15 practices, whatever the total is. So one spring game isn't going to kill you, but there's been guys that have flashed and they've had huge spring games, and you never heard from them again. Solomon Thomas, the one who had 7 sacks in a spring game, which is crazy. Solly was a nice player and role player, played a little bit. But he didn't have 7 sacks in his career. But in one day, when he had the right matchup versus a really bad offensive tackle, he had 7 sacks. So you'll get matchups like that. That's why I always, when people ask me who's going to be the MVP of the spring game, I always pick a defensive end who's going against a tackle that might not be able to pass block. Do we have a tackle out there that can't pass block? And does Caden Curry fist fight to go against them, or Kenyatta, or whoever? And then you throw in not just the fact that there's a mismatch on the edge, but then the fact that the sacks are touch sacks. So like you just kind of glance and touch his shoulder pad and that counts as a sack. So because there's sometimes like, guys they'll be in the grasp, but they can get out or they can duck through the pocket. And Ryan Day always coaches these officials, hey, have a quick whistle with my quarterbacks in the spring game, because he doesn't want anyone to get hurt, but that doesn't help the tackles out where, if someone's like within the halo of them, then magically that counts as a sack. Funky, as we get into this season, who are going to be some of your guys that you think are going to break out this year? Again, this is early. It's early to do breakout picks because obviously a lot can happen during summer workouts and fall camp. But who are some guys you're excited to see? Because I think guys like, there's a lot of guys that have moved around that have done a lot. Guys like Sonny Styles, guys like CJ Hicks. Davidson Igbinosun is a guy that I think is a real popular breakout pick. And by breakout, I don't mean like a guy that started and played and people know the name. I'm talking about like they turn into like first team All Big Ten, All American level players, as opposed to just, contributors and starters. Who are some guys that you would pick to break out to that level this year?
I think the one I would pick would be Jordan Hancock. I think his position at cornerback, more like the. Would we consider him a slot cornerback, Kirk, or do you think you're more of an outside guy?
I think he's a nickel. I think that's exactly what he is,
yeah.
and playing nickel is really hard to do, and he's really good at it.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna be that guy this year. I mean, he came back for another year. We weren't 100% that he was gonna do that coming into this year, but he kind of with Denzel Burke, he's always gonna get that wide receiver number 2, a little bit of a lesser role, but I think he's really gonna excel in that, and I think he's gonna be a very vocal and strong point of our offense, and someone that could hypothetically slip in to be a day one pick and a first round pick in the NFL draft with the right amount of year. And I think with the Caleb Downs at safety helping him over top, I think he's gonna have a little more just like freedom to play his position and make a little more highlights, go for a little more picks, because he knows that he has help all around him on defensively. And I think if we get a lot more pressure this year, I think that's going to help our secondary a lot. I think that's going to just create a lot more turnovers. Because last year we really struggled with creating turnovers. For if that's because we're cage rushing, if that's because the other teams are just getting the ball off quick, but I feel like we just lack turnovers. But I think this year we're going to see a lot more turnovers because the teams aren't going to really know what to do. They're if they sit back and try to pass, they're going to get rushed and sacked. And I think a lot of these younger quarterbacks, especially in the Big Ten, which this year lacks quarterbacks, I think it's going to be a year for the defense where I think we're going to create a lot of turnovers and that's going to turn into a lot of points because that, yeah, and I cannot wait. And I think Jordan Hancock's going to be the vocal piece of our defense that not a lot of people are talking about right now.
I think that's a great pick. I mean, I think Jordan Hancock's a guy that a lot of people sleep on because of Denzel. When you play the outside cornerback, I think it's just a sexier position. People get more excited about him and Davidson Igbinosun, but playing nickel is a lot like playing kind of like Sam linebacker and corner because you're in a lot of tighter, confined areas. You're not all on the island as much. They're both hard, obviously, but you do a lot of traffic and a lot of traffic directing in the mix when you're playing linebacker nickel over the slot. You're generally going against a smaller guy who's quick. So it's tough sledding there. You can out physical those guys, but man, you better be on point when it comes to your technique because and plus they count on you more in run support because you're right there. They come to the wide side of the field. You're generally the guy. You're right there. You could be the force guy at times, depending on what the role is. But it'll be exciting to see what he can do. I think, obviously Caleb Downs. When we do this, we try to not to pick the most obvious guys, like Caleb Downs and Trey Henderson. But I think Josh Simmons is a guy that could break out as an All Big Ten tackle this year. He's a guy who I love his film. I watch his film. I don't love it necessarily from the production all of the time. But I see very rare movement schools. I see a guy that he's light on his feet. He needs to get much stronger. I'm sure he's gotten much stronger over the past 5 months with Mickey. But he has really rare speed, agility. He looks the part. But I don't know if he's really ready to turn up and be great. That's the thing is Does he have the mentality to be great? And again, if you guys want to hear what greatness sounds like, watch Orlando. I interviewed Orlando Pace, and he talked about the mentality, the studying, the work ethic, pre-practice, post-practice. I mean, Orlando was obviously the best player in school history, in my opinion. But, it helped. Obviously, he's 6'7", 330, physically gifted. But he put in a lot of work, a lot of technical stuff that he talked about on the podcast that I don't know if Josh Simmons is there yet. And again, I think that that's something that if you don't hold him to that standard, I don't think you'll ever be at that standard. I've been around a lot of guys like Josh Simmons that are really, really athletic, good players, but he's got a level that is so much higher than where he's producing right now. And I hope he gets there. Again, he's a guy that I think he just has rare tools. He's a lot like Josh Fryer. Like Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons didn't finish on high notes last year. They both gave up sacks in the bowl game, didn't play well. And I just want to know, kind of why, what happened, and what have they done to fix it. And I think Josh Fryer has a lot of upside too. Like I'm a lot higher on both of our tackles than pretty much anybody. And I study tackles more than any position on the football field. So I think we got a good set of tackles. I think that those guys have a lot of pride. I think that they're sore and angry based on how the season finished. The Missouri game was awful. Michigan wasn't their finest moment. But those were also the best guys they played all year too. Obviously we played Chop Robinson at Penn State. He got knocked out of the game early by Matt Jones. But outside of Chop, like we didn't really see guys like the Missouri and the Michigan guys. Missouri had real dudes. They had all SEC D end. They had good guys in the interior. So, it'll be interesting to see that. And then, Donnie Jackson's a guy that I think he gets a lot of hype. I think it's from the recruiting rankings. I think it's because of his physical ability, but I think he's got a lot more in the tank than he puts on tape. I think he needs to be a dominator. Like he needs to be the guy that people run by, and he needs to be the ass kicker on the team. Because I think he could do that. He's got all the ability to do it. He's got the speed, the explosion, the strength. But he's got to get the footwork in, the hand work in. And I've talked to a lot of people in that building. That's something they're really focusing on this spring. Is getting their hands right. Because again, if you play offensive line and your hands are poor, you don't really have a chance. I mean, because once those guys get the D linemen get their hands on you, their whole livelihood is getting their hands on you. If they can't get their hands on you, then you'll mow them down and dominate them. But if they get their hands on you in the right spots, then they win. So that's something that Justin's really been working on in a major way. We got a second super chat. Corey, thank you for the deuce. Val Kilmer is a great actor. I have no idea what that means. I don't even know if Funky knows who Val Kilmer is. And OSU's record in 2024. Funky, I'll let you go first. Project out Ohio State's record in 2024.
I would love to say undefeated in the regular season, but I think that Oregon game is just a little rough. I think we probably I know this is a thing negative, but I think we probably slip up once versus Oregon, then run the table, and then play Oregon again in the Big Ten Championship at a neutral site and win that. And then, and I think we at least go to the national championship, but this is the year for us to win a national championship. Last year we knew it probably wasn't totally a national championship year. 2 years ago, 100% was a national championship year. Just missed a field goal, and that's what screwed us over. But I think this year the expectations have to be you might slip up once in the regular season just because you just have a harder season. But by the time the playoff rolls around and it's all neutral fields, I don't see us losing in a neutral field game this year. I think that's obviously with you can't really predict injuries, and it's hard, and Texas is really good and Georgia's really good. But I would have to say one loss to Oregon. I think the Penn State game will be a little rough, but I think the rest of the games, and obviously the Michigan game is the Michigan game, but I think we're going to take them back to the field house in this one. But yeah, I'd probably say we slip up once at Oregon, run the rest of the table, then win the national championship. So whatever that is, that's 15-1. So
yeah,
and that's I think the 15-1 and then the national championship would be my preseason prediction.
I think that's fair. I mean, again, like obviously Akron, Western Michigan, those will be, name the score, directional school, and Akron might be the worst team in 1A. Then we're off. Then obviously Marshall run through those guys. Michigan State has been terrible the last few years. They got a new coaching staff. It'll be interesting to see what that guy can do. Iowa is always tough. They generally can't score, so you're looking at 5-0 heading into Oregon to Outson, and that's going to be a war. Well, that's going to be a tough. I mean, that's going to be one of the hardest games we've played in the last few years. On the road, I think they're significantly better than what Notre Dame was. Notre Dame, obviously, we needed the last play to beat them. I think with their speed, their skill, they're going to be very, very formidable. And that's going to be a team that we're going to have to watch out for. I was honestly surprised they didn't do more last year. Obviously, Washington got them twice, which kind of surprised me. I mean, I thought Oregon would get them in the Pac-12 championship. They were favored in the Pac-12 championship, but they did not get it done. But I think we're going to beat Oregon. I do. I think the defense will travel. I think the running game will be strong. Nebraska, no worries. They might be starting Dylan Raiola by then, so we'll have a true freshman potentially at quarterback. Penn State will be interesting. It's November 2nd. I don't know if they would make that a November night game, like that NBC night game like we had against Michigan State. That will be something to watch. And then you swing back to Purdue, who has not been good recently. Northwestern has been awful. That'll likely be at like Wrigley Field, I believe. Then Indiana's another home game. Then you got Michigan. So I like the stretch post Penn State where you've got Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana. You have three basic, patsies as your three schools, and then you play the Wolverines. So I like Northwestern because that'll be probably a noonish type game. It's a short plane ride, so it's not nearly as bad as coming from Iowa or coming from Nebraska that late in the season. So you got basically two home games and a short plane ride. So I think for a rest standpoint, I think that matters. Now I know that sounds crazy to some of you guys, but I've lived it. Like you play those night games on the road and you get home at 5 a.m. Those suck. And then obviously Michigan, and then the Big Ten Championship December 7th. But yeah, I mean, I pick a star on the table pretty much every year, but I feel really good about this year. This is a year where this is a team Ryan has to cash in. I mean, you get these. This is when you get dealt three aces on 100-play poker, man. You got to cash that in, man. You got to go hit the jackpot, go hit the big money, and I think it's going to be I think this will be where we have to win it. I mean, you got Trey, you got all these seniors back, but at the end of the year, we're going to see Oregon again. We'll see Texas, we'll see Georgia. I mean, those are the teams you're gonna have to get through this year. Of course, barring injury, anything can happen in college football. But if those teams are all healthy, I think those are the 4 or 5 best teams. Roger Smith, thank you for the deuce. Game 12. Which wide receiver gets covered by Will Johnson? Is it J.J. Smith, Emeka Egbuka, or Carnell Tate? Funky, I'll let you go first. Will Johnson is probably the best cornerback in the country. He's at Michigan. He jumped. Marvin ran the laziest slant I've ever seen in my life last year, and Will jumped it. And Kyle McCord never should have thrown it, but it was amazing. A guy was playing inside leverage man, and Marvin jogged the slant, and it got jumped and picked, and it was basically like a pick six. I mean, I think Will got tackled on the 2-yard line, but it was a pathetic all-around performance on that play. Who do you think draws Will Johnson in the Michigan game? So after 12 weeks of regular season football, basically is JJ the number one, and would he get shadowed by Will Johnson? Funky.
Yeah. Well, wasn't that playing RPO, Kirk? The Kyle McCord
Yeah.
pick
Oh,
play?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, yeah, Kyle should never have thrown that in the first place, and Marvin probably saw that right away, so that's probably why he was jogging that. And I love how Michigan fans always use that clip as a where Will Johnson didn't get totally torched that game. Like, if Ohio State gets in the end zone after that, and we get or another 30 yards and we score a touchdown and win that game, I I don't know. I'm not a huge Will Johnson guy. He he got absolutely torched by Marvin Harrison last year, and I get that's Marvin Harrison, and everyone gets torched by him. But if I want to call you like a generational quarterback and the number one cornerback going into the nation, I want to see you like show up big time in a game like that, and your highlight shouldn't come from a misread RPO play. I don't know. That just seems like more of a defensive scheme instead of an actual like player prop on that. But that I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a hater right there. But to answer the question, I think Will Johnson will be on the outside guarding that Marvin Harrison like player, which this year will be JJ Smith. As long as if JJ Smith's healthy and he's putting up the stats that we think he's gonna be putting up. I think that's probably who Will Johnson will be after, and I think Jeremiah is gonna feast on him. I think Will's gonna and he's missing. I mean, to his Will's defense, he's gonna be out two starting safeties. You know, Keon Sabs transferred to Alabama, and oh my God, I'm forgetting the other one, the guy who just got tore his ACL. He's gone. So I think that's gonna really hurt his stock not having those guys behind him that he could trust fully. And I think if you put him on a full island versus a guy like Jeremiah or a guy like Emeka or Cornell, I think he's not going to be as good as we once thought he was going to be. It reminds me of 2017 Kirk, where Ohio State was actually underdogs going into that game. No, was it 2018? I'm losing my. It was at Columbus. Michigan was 4.5 point favorites,
It was
and everyone was
18. Yeah, the
yeah,
Haskins game.
2018. Yeah, and everyone was hyping up these players. I'm the middle linebacker for Michigan that year. I'm completely blanking again.
Bush.
And Bush, yeah, Devin
Yeah.
Bush and Rashawn Gary, and everyone's hyping them up like they're these superstar players, and they just went into the horseshoe and just got beat down. I mean, we dropped 56 points on them or something crazy like that, and that's just what happens when you're. And they're great players. I just think this year they're going to be great players on teams that don't have a ton of help, so they're just going to look like pretenders. Because you could look like a really good player if you have a lot of help around you. So, but yeah, to answer the question, I think Jeremiah is going to be the one that's covered by him, and I think he's going to eat.
And this is the play in question. Again, here's Will Johnson playing. He's playing. I mean, he's playing inside leverage here. So this is kind of a dead duck. The weird thing is this is an RPO, and if he hands this ball off, like imagine. Okay, so imagine he hands the ball off here. You got a double team here to here to here. You got here, here. You know, so you're blocked. If he hands this, imagine if he hands this ball off. I mean, you have a hat for every single guy in the photo. So you have Trey to the wide side of the field. He can go here. He can go here. He can cut back here. So this was bizarre. And again, I know who he's reading. I know he's reading this guy on this RPO. And the guy kind of shuffles over. But God bless. If he hands this thing off, man, I think this might have been predetermined. It looks like an RPO. But like, if you hand this thing, there's nobody home. But Marvin, and again, I know Marvin Harrison is great. I know he's going to be the 4th overall pick to the Cardinals. I get that. But, you know, Kyle's going to see, hey, this guy, pretty good, and he's inside leverage. Marvin has got to run. Marvin jogs this slant, and this is terrible by Marvin. And I know Marvin's God, but he's not without criticism. He jogs this slant, and I mean, this is like the most disinterested thing I've ever seen in my life. And he gets jumped. And then, you know, the guy jumps him. He makes a great play. And it's, you know, partially because Marvin gives no effort on the play. And then after the play, Marvin just like kind of, you know, he gets bumped. And I mean, it's, you know, for a guy that runs a 4-4, 4-3, 4-2, whatever, he quits on the play. He quits. You know, I mean, this guy's not down. He's still, I mean, he might think he's down, but this guy's still up. You know, so he gets he almost gets in the end zone. I mean, he's on the 15 here, and Marvin stops. And Marvin's just kind of walking off to the sideline, and the guy almost squirts out of there. So it's like, dude, like when you're our best player, you gotta play with some effort at some point, you know. And again, I know Marvin's God, and he's gonna go 4th overall. I get that, but like when your best player does stuff like that, man, it's hard to beat a team like Michigan, that's frankly significantly tougher than we were last year. So again, the guy's got to get back to playing hard in the Michigan game, because I see that too much when we play a team like that, and it just it honestly drives me nuts, because you can't, you know, go watch AJ Hawk against Michigan, go watch Schlegel, go watch Quinn Pitcock, go watch Troy. I mean, I never saw anything like that before, but it was startling. PJ Studio, thank you for the 10. Hearing a lot of chatter about Coleman being the first running back off the board. Oh my God. He is an explosive, no top end speed. It doesn't catch the ball. He does have good balance and vision. What am I missing here? I have no idea. Is that really a thing? I mean, I thought he'd be like a 5th round pick, maybe. He's a plotter. Like, there's nothing impressive. I mean, I didn't even think he was the best running back on his own team. Funky, I'll let you start off with that one. That's stunning to me, because I don't see it in Blake Corum. And again, that's not even me being. This is just me put my draft evaluation cap on, if I'm a Browns fan, would I be excited if they took Blake Corum? No, like not in a billion years. But your thoughts, Funky, on Blake Corum potentially being the first running back off the board?
I mean, I first of all, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. Blake Corum will not be the first running back taken off the board. Yeah, he'll probably be a fourth round guy if I had to gun to head. Fourth round guy, maybe mid to early fourth round ish. Uh, I don't. I mean, Blake was a great running back for Michigan. I mean, he was. I think he's too small though. I think he's too small to be a legit running back in the NFL, and his durability, I think, should be questioned a little bit. He had that injury his junior year, and he was a little banged up his senior year. And I think he was a product of what I mean, one of the best offensive lines that we've seen in a long time. These bunch of 5, 6 year guys, uh, came from transferring in, coming from everywhere, with Jim Harbaugh as head coach, who's a great, great, great offensive line coach. I think he might have been a little bit of a product of that, but he absolutely will not be the first round taken off the board. And I think people let's remember his vacuum cleaning business with Stallions, Kirk, that everyone mysteriously forgot about. Like I still can't believe that happened. Like I can't believe people completely. I'm excited to see what that ended up being, because that's a crime. That's a literal crime if Blake Corum wasn't like aware of this cleaning service.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it was as good as Braylon Allen. Like, I mean, I don't maybe. And again, I'm not being a hater, but I'm just looking at like ESPN's their grades right now. So they've got the kid from Texas is the number one guy. Trey Benson from Florida State is the number two guy. They got these guys have Quorum at 3. NFL Network has him at 4. Yeah, but they've got him as the 68th overall pick, which is a third rounder. If there's 32 teams, first 2 rounds, 64 picks. So beginning of the third roundish type. But this is an atrocious year for running backs. I mean, this is as bad as I've ever seen. I think the kid from Texas is way, way better. Because again, it's not like your production in college literally means almost nothing. It's about what traits do you have that translate to the NFL game. Like Jahmyr Gibbs was a guy who was productive, but his like 4.35 speed and his ability to catch the football made him like a first round pick, a high level guy. Like I didn't see that out of Blake Corum. And again, that is not me being a hater, but he was a guy that had kind of every advantage in college. They played with the lead a lot, so he had a good running back mate, so he was generally fresher. But I thought he was a good player. But again, did I think he's better than Jonathan Brooks or some of these other guys that can fly? No. Like again, I thought he was a lot closer to like Mike Hart. Like Mike Hart was prolific at Michigan. I think he was their all-time leading rusher. Stayed there for 4 years, but I mean Blake Corum, I was never like, oh my God, how are we going to stop Blake Corum? And again, when I was there my freshman year, when I didn't travel, when I redshirted, like they had Chris Perry, like Michigan had Chris Perry, first round pick. You guys remember Tim Biakabatuka, first round pick. Those guys were much more explosive, much more prolific than Blake Corum, like from an NFL standpoint. I know Blake Corum obviously broke the records and million yards and touchdowns, but none of that really matters. Nobody really cares in the NFL about your statistics in college. If anything, I think it hurts you because there's this, every player is basically like a Carfax report where it's like, okay, how much mileage does he have? How many times has he been hit? How many carries? When these guys have 350 carries, and again, that was something that helped us get Quinshon Judkins. I mean, go look up how many carries he had, like an ungodly number of touches last year. And outside of, the touchdowns and the times you run out of bounds, all those other carries end in you getting hit, tackled, gang tackled, whatever. So again, I don't see it. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe, I mean, but I haven't seen anything that has him as the number one running back on the board. But I've seen crazier things happen in the NFL draft. GMs are really, really dumb. Like they make really dumb decisions all the time. That's why they get fired every 3 years, because they're dumb. They're usually some lackey that was a scout that works his way up to being a personnel guy, and then he gets hired as a GM. And Ryan Pace from the Chicago Bears took Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes. and Mitch Trubisky, again, nice kid, Ohio kid, whatever. But like, dude, versus like, I mean, I would have for sure gone Watson over Mahomes. Nobody knew Pat Mahomes was going to be this good. Nobody. And obviously, he could be the best quarterback who's ever lived. But coming out of A&M or Texas Tech, nobody was like, Pat Mahomes is going to be the greatest guy who's ever thrown a football in his life. Now, he's turned into that. But again, I think quarterbacks are very much a product of circumstances, scheme. Obviously, he had Alex Smith there for a year, and he had Andy Reid. So he had one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of mankind. He had Kelsey, he had Tyreek Hill. That all helps. Now, I'm not taking any away from Patrick Mahomes. I think he's probably the best quarterback who's ever lived. But when you've got Andy Reid as your quarterback guru, developer, offensive play caller, like, your life is way, way better than having, Freddie Kitchens or something, or, some of the guys that some of the Browns guys have had to deal with. Poohbeard12, thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my friend, and thanks for being a Scoop Ultra member. Regarding young guys, like Julian's saying, becoming starters, we hear the players know. Are players talking to the coaches about this? Do you think players influence decisions? KB, what were you doing / saying for Troy Smith? In my opinion, I think that the players don't have enough yank to go to a coach and say, hey, this guy needs to play, unless it's something where maybe somebody gets hurt and they're trying to figure out who's going to be the third wide receiver or whatever. Because generally, like, the coaches aren't trying to hear that. I think players can try to influence stuff, but I mean, you better be like an AJ Hawk. You better be like the best player in America before you go to a coach and say, hey, this guy needs to play. Because again, coaches aren't trying to hear that. That's not their job. Before I get into the Troy Smith thing, Funky, your comments on that. Do you think players talking to coaches, again, at any level of sports, I don't think that's helpful, but what is your thought on that? Players talking with coaches about, young players playing or different guys playing. Give me your thoughts on that.
I think you nailed it right on the head, Kirk. I think unless you're the best player on the team or you've been there for 4 years and you're a team captain and already have a pre-developed relationship with the coach, I think saying that, especially in a sport like football where there's where 20 or 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense at the same time, and these coaches are so it's so hard to well, these coaches know more about these players than you probably know about them, which is so you I don't know, just players. As an athlete myself, I don't think I would ever say that to a coach again, unless I'm I know something they don't know. If a player's injured and not telling them or something like that, then but no, I don't think any players would seriously try to go to a coach and really vouch for a kid, especially over another kid who would be his teammate. So
yeah, I think that's it's a slippery slope, because if someone finds that out, like if, oh, hey, I heard, Barton went to Jim Trussell and said that this guy should this guy should play, or this guy should whatever. And I mean, that's not great. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's like snitching or tattletaling, but it's kind of like that same wavelength of things that you're not really dying to do that. And again, the coaches are privy, because again, you have to understand, and I say this all the time, and most of you guys know my credentials, but like, I played and then I also coached. So as a player, you are privy to way less information about every player than when you're a coach. Like, when I'm a coach, I'm sitting in every academic meeting, and the academic meeting goes something like this. Every coach on the entire staff is in there. Every GA on the entire staff is in there. The academic people from SASO, which is the Student Athlete Success something or whatever, like, they come over, they give a report and a number grade for every single player on the team. And then Mickey Murati's in that meeting too, and he gives a weight room grade for every single player on the team. So you might, as a player say, oh man, this guy is great, this guy's really good. And then you don't know that he missed class 5 times and he failed a drug test and he was late to a workout, or he told a coach to go F himself, or some crazy stuff. So it's like, you don't know that stuff. So again, the thing when I was a player that I'd always harken back on is that these coaches love their families. They love their families, they love their wives, they love their kids, and they don't want to have to move. And if they play the wrong guys and they don't perform and they suck and they don't get these guys to produce, then guess what? They get fired and then they have to move. And a lot of times when you leave Ohio State, you don't go somewhere like it's like trading in a Bentley for, a Pinto. A lot of these guys, they don't go to, they don't go to Michigan. I mean, Alford went to Michigan, but most of these guys, they usually go somewhere that's lesser than Ohio State. So I know that there's sometimes politics and people like they get they always have excuses as to why they didn't play, why they didn't make it, whatever. But like the coaches want to play the best players because again, they want to stay there. And again, the best players might not always be the best football players, but it might be the guys that they just trust the most. Because I've seen really good players not play because they're completely unreliable in practice or completely unreliable off the field. And, if you put a gun to my head and you say, hey, if we put this guy in the game, can we count on him? And I know what he's like off the field. I'd be like, hell no. Leave him on the bench. Please do not put him in the game. Because again, I've seen it. So there's a lot to that. In terms of what was I doing saying for Troy Smith, I mean, I had the interview where I said that I thought Troy and Justin should both play. And you can go look the quote up, go 2004 Iowa, Kirk Barton. You guys can all Google it and go read the quote. The quote said, I thought they should both play. I thought they're both good players. I thought quarterback was no different than running back. When you have two good running backs, they both play. When you have two good quarterbacks, especially when neither one's really grabbed the brass ring, they should both play. Obviously, it set off a firestorm, but I was right. I mean, I said he should play, and what happened? He won the Heisman. So, again, sometimes you call your shot, and you're just like, hey, maybe we should buy some Bitcoin in 2005 or something like that. And then you're like, well, that was a good call. So that's kind of what Troy Smith was early in his career. Larry Daniels, thank you for being a Scoop Watch member, and thank you for the 5. 1 L for a natty would be worth the sacrifice, don't you think, Kirk? Absolutely. Funky, OH.
I'm not
Everybody,
Nevada.
Yeah, I know he said funky. He is not Nevada. That's the funniest thing ever is people thought it was Nevada with a voice changer, and I was like, oh, no. Definitely not Nevada. Nevada will be back tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, Funky, you're doing that sacrifice all day, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, and the regular season has never meant less. Like, if we're being honest, like we we like what's the real difference if we lose 2 games but we beat Michigan still, then we win the Big Ten championship? Like, does that really matter between what we'd be a 3 or a 4 seed? Because the Big 12 champ would still probably be the 4 seed, so it would be the 3 seed instead maybe the 1 or the 2 seed. So it's like the regular season doesn't really mean that much anymore especially as long as we win the Big Ten championship, because we're guaranteed a top 4 seed pretty much. Obviously, unless other stuff happens, but we'd pretty much guaranteed a top 4 seed. So, like, I mean, I would sacrifice 2 losses. We can lose Oregon and Penn State. We'll play one of them back in the Big Ten championship, and we'll beat them there. And then all of a sudden, we have to run the table in the playoffs, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm a guy that I lived it. I lost 2 national championships. It sucks. I'm in the Caitlin Clark club of losing 2 straight national championships. It sucks. And the one thing I will tell you, in '06 we went undefeated, lost. '07 obviously we lost that game late to Illinois. I think, and this will be crazy, and you guys can call me a loser and call me whatever you want to call me. I've been called everything under the sun, so I don't really care. But sometimes a loss is not bad. Sometimes it helps you recalibrate. Sometimes, some of these guys are feeling themselves. Again, it was like, Alabama got smacked by Texas this year. And I think that, some of these guys, when they're rated as a top, 5-star recruit, they join a program, they're number 1 in the country. And then they get smashed by, Texas, in their home stadium. I think it lets a guy like Nick Saban or a guy like Ryan Day or Jim Knowles or whoever kind of unleash the hounds. I think that all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, like you guys might think you're great, and you're all these douchebag media people might say that you're great, and your mom and dad might say you're great, but you're not. you just got smoked at home. And it really lets the coaching staff kind of unload on these guys. And there's nothing that the players can do other than just take it and go get better. I mean, that's the thing that's like the thing about football is it's cathartic after a loss to get back to work, get back to practice. And when you're winning, sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes you're just like, man, I don't really feel like practicing. We're undefeated. Like we just beat Michigan. We just did whatever. So I could see it both ways. I think a loss, like a losing to Oregon, might be the best thing that happens for this team. And again, I don't want it to happen, but if it does happen, I think that it's, again, and when you're in a 12-team playoff, like if they lose to Oregon and run the table, they'll be in the playoff. And that includes beating Oregon again in the Big Ten championship. But that's just my opinion. Because I think, if we beat Oregon and we're undefeated going into that Oregon game, that Big Ten title game, I think that the rematch usually favors the team that lost. I think that they're the motivated team. Again, you saw it with Georgia and Alabama, SEC championship, and then they played again in the national championship. And, like Bama won the SEC, but then they lost the Natty. And again, I've got 3 Big Ten championship rings. I don't wear any of them. If I would have got a national championship ring, I probably would have won that one a little bit. But winning the Big Ten is just kind of old hat at Ohio State. Like nobody celebrates a Big Ten championship at Ohio State because it's not really a thing. Like nobody really cares. And how do I know that? Well, in 05, 06, and 07, we won the Big Ten title. Have we had any sort of reunion or recognition on the field or anything for any of those teams? No. Now in 06, if we beat Florida and win the Natty and we're undefeated and considered the best football team of all time, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they would have had us on the field in 16 and back in 20, the 10 year, the 20 year. But if you don't win the big ring at Ohio State, you're just another team, which again, I like that. I like the expectations being high. I like that we don't celebrate just winning the Big Ten because, frankly, I don't think that that's fair. And I honestly wish that every team was held to that standard. It's like when our basketball team goes to the Final Four and like nobody cares unless you win the big ring. It doesn't matter. Going to the Final Four, going to the Elite Eight, like they shouldn't have banners up for that. Like nobody cares. But that's just my opinion. And that was an excellent question, so I appreciate you on that. Roger Smith, thanks for the deuce. Love our Bucks, but I'm with Troy. No corny stuff. Plus an OH for you, Funky. Funky, I don't know if you watched Troy, but Troy was Troy's a tough cookie now. I mean, he's not dancing and twerking in pregame like our guys like to do now. But yeah. Well, this has been a great show. It's got another super chat in. Oh, this is great. Here we go.
We need to stop doing that little. I'm sorry. We need to stop doing that dance circle with Ryan Day and the quarterbacks.
It's the worst.
It's so cringe.
It's terrible.
It's the worst thing ever. I hate it so much, and it just creates for the worst ever post game, especially after a loss. Like it just stop with the tough love, Ryan Day. Like that. I'm gonna refrain from cussing Kirk, but god dang it, that is not. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, I don't like it. Then especially we go out and we twerk, we do a little twerk off. I mean, because sometimes I'm like, I think that's the only way they can get Jaden Ballard on the field. So he's out there and he does the twerk, and then Mayan, and then Kojo, like a bunch of guys that don't play twerk, and then we go out and get smashed, and that's just kind of where we're at. Like I would can that. I would can tough love. I'd get back to being a tough program, and hopefully we can do that. I mean, I think that we're on the right path. I think Jim Knowles is a tough guy. I think we got some legitimate tough people on the program, so we'll see. But we got to figure out who the guy is going to be on offense now that Cade's gone. Because with Cade, I knew that we had a tough guy, but now we just got to figure out what we got. Donald Karen Rosbeck, thank you for being a Scoop Ultra member. Thank you for the 5. Kirk, I bought a copy of your Senior Bowl card yesterday. I'm going to put it with the jersey you're going to sign for me for my OSU room. Funky OH.
I-O.
The Senior Bowl was one of those things where I wish I didn't play in it, but I did. So I got hurt, which sucked. I mean, I got hurt. Here, this is it. Look at this. This is hilarious. Look at this. A little too much gel in the hair. That's ridiculous. They took this is when I was a sophomore. I actually put gel in my hair. I don't put any product in my hair anymore, but that's the card. But yeah, actually, it was funny. I had 2 really good practices down there, and I was balling. Then it tore my knee up, so that absolutely sucked. So that was not fun. A. Willis, thank you for the deuce. Oh, great. Your shirt came today. Really nice quality. Go Bucks. I appreciate you. I am getting a ton of love on the quality of the shirts. So, Dr. Kurt, who has a face for radio, he sent me his photo. He's in his massive shirt. He also has a Buckeye Scoop polo. So for all of you that ordered gear, it should be coming in very quickly here. Again, I love the photos. My boy Kurt Whiteside, he sent me the photo. Again, I appreciate you guys rocking with us, rocking the gear. We put the American flag on the side of the hats. It's a great touch. I think you guys love that. Most of you guys are great patriots, and you love supporting the country. So it's a really good look. Corey, thank you for the deuce. Val K was referring to McGruber the other night. Funky OH.
I-O.
My dude. I got you. Okay, that's the Val Kilmer. Because I was wondering what's like Val Kilmer. I was like, that's a hell of a callback. I wasn't sure if that was from Top Gun or what it was. So, well, I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys had a great night. Funky, any final thoughts as we wrap the show up?
Oh, yeah, just thank you for having me on again. And hopefully the Cavaliers can start winning basketball games so we're not another first-round exits this year. I do not want to see that thank you fans Instagram post anytime soon. So let's go Cavs go. Let's get Donovan Mitchell back healthy, and let's not be first-round exits, please God. And hopefully we pick Bronny and LeBron comes back to Cleveland for a retirement tour.
Would you do that if you own the Cavs, Funky? Would you take Bronny in the first round and just bury him in the G League? I've thought about that because I was like, I'd be that guy for sure.
100%. Bro, like we would have like a 24th, 25th pick in the draft or whatever. I'm not sure what it would be, but like 20th pick in the draft. Like those players end up being crap anyways. Like you can get your hometown hero LeBron back onto the Cavs. I would do it 100 out of 100 times, and I think just having. I mean, I would hate it for people that want to go to a bunch of Cavs games because those ticket prices would skyrocket out of this world moon. But for a fan that watches it on television, I would love it absolutely just to see LeBron. And we're missing kind of a LeBron piece on the Cavs anyways. And he's still a great, 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 great player. Like he's at least another 2 years in him of competing at an all-star level. So I would do it 100 out of 100 times. And I've been on record saying already, Kirk, I think that if Bronny actually declares for the draft, I think he'll be a top 20 pick if LeBron promises to come with him. But who knows with that? That's like I'm not even sure that's allowed, like the NBA rules. But yeah.
It'll be really interesting. And a quick update as we wrap the show up. My little dude is now walking again. So the dude that broke his leg, there's my big dog running around with him. So he's gimping along, but the cast is off, and he was outside running around. He's actually moving a lot better after this, but yeah, that's some good news. So, Funky, give me your final thoughts, and we'll wrap the show up.
Oh, yep. Just appreciate being on the show again, and go Bucks, and I'm excited for the spring game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fantastic day in the shoe. As always, we appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for kicking with us. As always, again, we appreciate everything you guys do. This is a huge show tonight because you guys made it one. So thank you for that. Our outing, April 13th, 6 days away. I'm going to remind you guys every single day we need all of you guys to show up. It's going to be an absolute blast. Buffalo Wild Wings, corner of Lane and High Street, right next to Ohio Stadium. I'll be there right at 9 a.m., ready to rock. Kim's going to be there with me. We're going to have a slew of people from the podcast and the website there, so it's going to be an absolute blast. Can't wait to see all you guys. I think it's going to be a really good time. Just relax, get to know some of you guys, take some photos, drink some beers, do whatever you guys want to do, eat some food, watch the game there, head to the game, whatever you guys want to do. So I think it'll be a blast. So looking forward to meeting you guys. Again, as always, we appreciate all you do for this channel. If you enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Those are huge for growing the channel. Shout out where you guys are watching from, and shout out who you guys are watching with. Again, I appreciate you guys each and every night tuning in. And shout out, what is going to be your Sunday headline after the day after the spring game? What is going to be the big headline? What's going to be the big story? Put that in the comments. Is it JJ Smith? Is it Julian Sands? Is it Will Howard? I want to hear what you guys want. Mello, thank you for the deuce. A super chat right at the buzzer. Appreciate you, my man. Can you break down Josh Petty's film, tomorrow's OTGA? Yeah, I will do that for sure. I'll download it tonight and get it ready to go for you, Mello. So I appreciate that. Yeah, and I love the film request. If there's a recruit you guys want us to do from a film breakdown perspective, just put it in a super chat and I'll look for it and I'll try to pull it and we'll break it down. Those are always really fun to do, and I always love kind of seeing kind of what we're getting for taking guys' silent commitments this early in the process. So, but as always, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. We're going to talk to you guys tomorrow. We'll go nice right around 7. It'll be nice and early because the game, the finals basketball game doesn't start to tip off to like 9:20 at night, which is insane. But I don't know why they do that in college basketball, but they do. So we're going to get into the episode right around 7. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at 7. I hope you guys have a great night. Enjoy the solar eclipse tomorrow, and then get ready for the scoop at 7. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.